My father announced my newborn son would not be coming home with me while I was still stapled shut from surgery. I was sitting in a private maternity room at St. Agnes Medical Center. One day after an emergency C-section, with a catheter still taped to my leg and an ice pack pressed against an incision that felt like fire every time I breathed, my son, Oliver, was asleep in the clear hospital bassinet beside me. He was 29 hours old, tiny, red-cheeked, wrapped so tightly he looked like a small angry burrito. My husband, Aaron, had gone downstairs to move our car from the emergency entrance because the nurse said we might be discharged the next afternoon if my blood pressure stayed steady. That was the first moment I had been alone since the surgery. It lasted 6 minutes. Then my father walked in with my mother, my older brother, and my brother's wife. No flowers, no balloons, no congratulations. Just 4 people entering quietly, closing the door behind them, and arranging themselves around my bed like a committee deciding what to do with property. My father, Warren Bellamy, placed a blue legal folder on my blanket, right over my abdomen. I flinched so hard pain flashed white across my vision. I gasped. He did not move the folder. He tapped the top page instead. You need to sign before discharge. I looked down. The heading read, Temporary Newborn Guardianship and Family Placement Authorization. For a second, the words made no sense. Then my brother's wife, Kendra, stepped closer to Oliver's bassinet and said, It is better for everyone if the baby comes home with us first. My body went cold. What did you say? Kendra smiled with swollen eyes, like she had practiced looking compassionate in a mirror. You just had major surgery, Mia. You are emotional. You can barely stand. Drew and I have a nursery ready, and your father agrees this child needs stability. This child, not Oliver, not my son. This child. My brother Drew kept his hands in his pockets and looked at the floor. My mother stood by the door, nervously watching the hallway. My father uncapped a pen. You will sign temporary placement to your brother and Kendra. The trust lawyers can finalize the support arrangement later. I pushed the folder away. No. My father's jaw tightened. Mia, do not start. I said no. Oliver stirred in his bassinet. Kendra reached toward him. I snapped. Do not touch my baby. She froze. My father leaned over me, his voice dropping into the tone that had controlled my childhood. You are not thinking clearly. Kendra has waited 7 years to become a mother. You got pregnant by accident. You married a mechanic. You live in a 2-bedroom rental. Do you honestly think you are the best option for the Bellamy heir? The Bellamy heir. My son was not even 2 days old, and they had already turned him into a title. I reached for the nurse call button. My father grabbed the cord first and pulled it out of my reach. That was when the door opened. Nurse Rebecca Shaw stood in the doorway with a medication tray in her hands and the kind of calm face nurses wear when they have already decided someone is dangerous. She looked at the folder, then at the call button cord in my father's hand, then at me. Mrs. Reed, she said gently, do you want these visitors in your room? My father turned with his public smile. This is a private family conversation. Rebecca did not blink. I asked my patient. My throat felt raw. No, I whispered. I want them out. My father laughed once. She is drugged. She does not understand. Rebecca set the medication tray down. Then she looked directly at my father and said, Sir, please repeat what you just told her. Hospital security is recording now. The room went so still I could hear Oliver breathing. My father had walked into that maternity room believing I was weak, alone, and easy to pressure. He had no idea the nurse outside had already heard him say my newborn would be leaving with my brother's wife. He had no idea the small black camera clipped to Rebecca's badge was active under the hospital's patient safety protocol, and he had no idea that by the next morning, the papers he brought to steal my son would become the first exhibit in a legal nightmare that would end his control over our family forever. My name is Mia Bellamy Reed. I was 30 years old when my father tried to take my newborn son from my hospital room. Before I tell you how a nurse's recording destroyed the plan my family had been building for months, comment below. If your own father said your baby would go home with another woman, would you ever forgive him? Comment protect the baby. If you already know a mother recovering from surgery is still stronger than a room full of greedy people, I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina, in a family where love sounded like accounting. My father owned Bellamy Outdoor Living, a chain of luxury patio and pool design showrooms across 3 states. He built his business from one warehouse, and by the time I was in middle school, he had become the kind of man who believed money proved morality. If someone was poor, they were irresponsible. If someone was struggling, they lacked discipline. If someone needed help, they owed him obedience. That was the rule of our house. My older brother Drew learned the rule quickly and used it well. Drew was handsome, confident, and useless in the polished way rich families forgive. He failed 2 semesters of college, came home with a tattoo my father pretended to hate and secretly admired, and eventually became vice president of development at Bellamy Outdoor Living because nobody outside the family would hire him for anything involving responsibility. I was different, not better, different. I liked quiet things, books, old houses, animals, work that had a point. My father called it lack of ambition. I became a pediatric occupational therapist because I loved helping children learn how to move through a world that was not always kind to their bodies. My father said therapy was soft work. Drew lost a vendor contract worth $80,000 and still got a promotion. I helped a 5-year-old boy with cerebral palsy hold a spoon for the first time, and my father asked when I planned to get a real career. For years, I tried to earn warmth from people who only understood performance. I dressed correctly, showed up for dinners, brought thoughtful gifts. Listened to my father praise Drew for arriving on time. Then I met Aaron. Aaron Reed was a mechanic who owned a small repair shop with his cousin. He had grease under his nails, kindness in his eyes, and absolutely no interest in performing wealth for my family. He fixed my car after I broke down outside Durham. When I apologized for crying in his waiting room, he handed me a bottle of water and said, "Cars break. People get tired. Neither thing makes you a problem." I married him 18 months later. My father wore a gray suit to the wedding and shook Aaron's hand like he was accepting a delivery. My mother cried quietly. Drew made a toast about unsuspected choices. Kendra wore white lace to the rehearsal dinner and pretended it was beige. That was my family's way of welcoming my husband. They did not rage. They documented disapproval in silk and silence. Kendra had married Drew 2 years before I married Aaron. She came from a family that had lost most of its money but none of its habits. She was beautiful, brittle, and desperate to reclaim the lifestyle her parents had spent away. For 7 years, she and Drew tried to have a baby. At first, everyone was sympathetic, then obsessed, then cruel. Every holiday became a fertility update. Every family prayer included Drew and Kendra's future child. Every conversation about legacy landed like a weight on Kendra's shoulders and bounced off Drew completely. My father wanted a grandson, not a grandchild, a grandson. A boy to carry the Bellamy name, inherit voting shares, and stand beside him in marketing photos wearing a tiny navy blazer. The obsession became worse after my grandmother died. Grandmother Celeste was my father's mother, and the only wealthy person I knew who did not worship wealth. She had been a quiet shareholder in Bellamy Outdoor Living, but her real passion was a family foundation that funded adaptive equipment for children. She loved my work. My father hated that. A month before she died, she asked me to visit her alone. She was in a hospital bed in her sunroom, surrounded by orchids and legal pads. "Mia," she said, "your father confuses control with legacy." I smiled sadly. "I know." "No," she said, "you survive it. That is not the same as knowing." Then she told me she had changed her estate plan. I was not allowed to know the details yet, but she wanted me to remember one thing. If a child of yours ever becomes the center of a family conversation, ask who benefits from calling it family. After she died, the will revealed enough to make my father furious, though not enough for him to panic yet. Grandmother Celeste created the Bellamy Children's Independence Trust, worth almost $4 million, designed to fund medical care, education, housing, and adaptive resources for the first grandchild born to either Drew or me until that child turned 25. The child's mother would serve as primary guardian of the trust, not the grandfather, not the Bellamy board, not Drew the mother. My father called the clause sentimental nonsense, Drew called it complicated. Kendra called it unfair. I called it Grandma Celeste, knowing exactly who her son was. Still, nobody worried at first. Drew and Kendra were trying. Aaron and I were not. Then I got pregnant. It was not planned. It was not strategic. It was 2 pink lines on a Tuesday morning. Me sitting on the bathroom floor crying while Aaron laughed and cried at the same time because neither of us knew what else to do. When we told my family, my mother pressed both hands to her mouth and said, "Oh." My father stared at me. Drew stared at Kendra. Kendra excused herself to the bathroom and stayed there for 20 minutes. That night, my father called. "You need to be careful about what this means." I was still smiling from hearing my baby's heartbeat that afternoon. "What it means is I'm having a baby. It means Celeste's trust activates if you deliver first." There it was. No joy. No congratulations. Only calculations, I said. "Good night, Dad." After that, the pressure began, small at first. My father offered to pay for a bigger apartment if we moved closer to Drew and Kendra. I refused. Kendra invited me to lunch and cried about how hard it was seeing me pregnant without even trying. I felt sorry for her until she said, "Sometimes I think God gives babies to the wrong women to test the rest of us." I left cash for my salad and walked out. Drew called Aaron and suggested we all meet with a family advisor. Aaron said, "About what?" Drew said, "Future arrangements." Aaron hung up. By my third trimester, my father stopped pretending. He sent emails about trust administration, then parenting support, then guardianship contingencies, then a draft document giving Drew and Kendra temporary caregiving authority if I experienced postpartum instability. I forwarded everything to Grandmother Celeste's attorney, Priya Nandakumar. She replied the same day, "Do not sign anything. Do not meet with them alone." Your grandmother anticipated a pressure campaign. I showed Aaron. His face hardened. "Mia, they don't want to help." "I know. No, you don't." He touched my stomach gently. "They are preparing to take control of him." I wanted to tell him he was wrong. But my son kicked under his hand, and suddenly I heard my grandmother's voice. "Ask who benefits from calling it family." Labor came 3 weeks early. My blood pressure spiked during a routine appointment, and the doctor sent us straight to St. Agnes. For 16 hours, I tried to deliver naturally. Then Oliver's heart rate dropped, everything blurred after that, bright lights, a nurse shaving part of my abdomen, Aaron in a blue surgical cap, telling me he loved me, pressure, tugging, a baby crying. My baby. When they held Oliver near my face, he was furious and perfect, with dark hair plastered to his head, and a cry that sounded personally offended by existence. For one day, nothing else mattered. Not my father, not the trust, not Drew, not Kendra, just Oliver's tiny fingers, and Aaron sleeping crookedly in a chair beside me with one hand on the bassinet. Then Aaron went downstairs to move the car, and my family arrived with papers. You know the first part. The folder on my incision, the demand, Kendra calling my son the child. My father pulling the nurse button away, Nurse Rebecca stepping in. "Sir, please repeat what you just told her. Hospital security is recording now." My father's face changed the way a room changes when a storm reaches the windows. He looked at the badge camera, then the hallway, then me. "You are making a mistake," he said. Rebecca moved closer to my bed. "No, sir. You are leaving a patient's room after she withdrew consent for your visit." My mother whispered, "Warren, let's go." Drew picked up the folder, but Aaron appeared in the doorway behind him before he could hide it. My husband took one look at my face and understood the shape of the room. "Mia?" I pointed at the folder. "They tried to make me sign Oliver over." Aaron did not shout. That was scarier. He looked at my father. "You brought custody papers to my wife's hospital room after abdominal surgery." My father straightened. "Temporary care papers. Your wife is overwhelmed." Aaron stepped toward him. Rebecca pressed the wall button. "Security to room 518. My father smiled coldly. "Call whoever you want." "This is a family matter," Rebecca said. "Not anymore." Security arrived in less than a minute. My family left under escort, walking past nurses, visitors, and 2 hospital administrators who had already been alerted. Kendra cried in the hallway, saying she only wanted to love the baby. Drew told a security officer the whole thing was a misunderstanding. My mother kept saying, We did not mean harm. My father said nothing. He only looked back at me once. His eyes promised punishment. For the first time in my life, I did not feel small under that look. I felt awake. That night, nobody slept. Not really. Oliver needed feeding every 2 hours. My incision burned. Aaron sat beside my bed with the folder, reading every page. The document was worse than I imagined. It did not simply allow Drew and Kendra to help care for Oliver. It authorized temporary physical placement at their residence. It granted them medical decision access. It allowed them to represent Oliver in trust-related matters. It included language stating I was voluntarily acknowledging postpartum incapacity, voluntarily. They had planned to make me sign a statement that I was unfit while I was medicated and recovering from surgery. Aaron photographed every page. Rebecca returned near midnight to check my vitals. She paused at the door. "I am sorry," she said. I shook my head. "You helped me." Her face softened. "My sister went through something similar, different details. Same kind of people." She checked my blood pressure, still high. Then she said quietly, "The recording is preserved through hospital security. The incident report will include your request for removal, the papers, the call button, and the statements we heard." I started crying, not loudly, just tears slipping sideways into my hairline, because after a lifetime of being told I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too ungrateful, someone had finally written down what happened. By morning, everything changed. At 7:40, Priya Nandakumar arrived. She was small, elegant, and terrifying in the way only very good lawyers can be terrifying. She wore a cream suit and carried no visible emotion into the room. Behind her came a hospital patient advocate and a security supervisor. Priya greeted me first, not Aaron, not the room. "Mia," she said, "your grandmother would be furious." I laughed once, then winced because laughing hurt. Priya placed a folder on the rolling tray beside my bed. "I reviewed the document your father brought. It is an attempted end run around the trust structure. He cannot access the trust through you, so he tried to create a caregiving path through Drew and Kendra." Aaron's jaw tightened. "Can they do anything?" "Not after last night." She opened her folder. "Celeste built protective triggers into the trust. Any documented attempt by a family member to coerce the primary guardian within 90 days of birth results in immediate suspension of that family member's advisory privileges, voting influence, and access to trust information." I stared at her. "My father had advisory privileges?" "Limited ones. Your grandmother left him enough rope to hang himself if he tried." That sounded exactly like Grandma Celeste, Priya continued. "Because of the hospital recording, the incident report, and the document itself, we are activating the protection clause this morning." "What does that mean?" "It means your father, Drew, and Kendra are barred from trust communications. Drew's pending appointment to the Foundation Advisory Board is canceled. Your father loses the family voting proxy Celeste allowed him to retain, and any contact with you or Oliver regarding custody, guardianship, or trust matters will be treated as harassment." For a moment, I could not speak. My father had spent my entire life using money as a locked door. Grandma Celeste had turned it into a wall around my son. At 9:15, Priya sent the notices. At 9:32, my father called her office 11 times. At 9:48, Drew sent Aaron a text. "You have no idea what you just did," Aaron replied. "Yes, we do." At 10:05, Kendra posted a black square on social media with the caption, "Some women destroy other women because they can have what others pray for." By 10:20, 3 people had sent me screenshots. Priya added it to the file. At noon, the hospital formally banned my father, mother, Drew, and Kendra from the maternity unit. Their photos were printed at the security desk. I should have felt sad. I felt safe. That afternoon, a police officer came to take my statement. I held Oliver while I spoke. That mattered to me. I wanted every word tied to the weight of him in my arms. I told the officer about the emails, the draft documents, the pressure, the hospital room, the call button, and my father's threat that the court would find me unstable. The officer listened carefully. Rebecca's recording had already been preserved. The patient advocate had written a statement. Security had camera footage of my family arriving with the folder and being escorted out. No hidden room, no private denial, No chance to rewrite it as concern. By the time we were discharged 2 days later, my family's plan had become evidence. We did not go home to our rental. Priya and Aaron convinced me to stay temporarily in grandmother Celeste's cottage, a property she had left for trust use on a quiet road near Wake Forest. It had a nursery I did not know existed, soft green walls, a rocking chair, bookshelves, a crib still in boxes. Inside the top drawer of the dresser, I found a letter addressed to me, Maya. If you are reading this with your baby near you, then I was right to prepare. I am sorry for that. A family should not have to be defended against itself, but ours does. You are not weak for wanting their love. You are wise when you stop paying for it with your peace. Protect the child. Protect yourself. Let the trust do what I built it to do. All my love. Celeste sat on the nursery floor, holding that letter, and sobbed harder than I had in the hospital. Aaron sat beside me with Oliver sleeping against his chest. He did not tell me to stop crying. He did not say they were not worth it. He knew grief is not proof someone deserved you. Sometimes grief is just the sound of the last hope leaving. The next weeks were quiet on the surface and violent underneath. My father hired a lawyer, then another. He tried to argue the hospital recording violated privacy. It did not. He tried to claim Rebecca misunderstood a loving family conversation. The document destroyed that. He tried to claim I had invited them. Hospital visitor logs showed my mother had lied at reception, saying I had requested a family estate meeting. She had not expected the hospital to keep notes. Hospitals keep notes about everything. Drew tried to distance himself from the paperwork until Priya uncovered emails between him and my father, discussing placement language and Kendra's presentation as primary caregiver. Kendra had written one sentence that ended any sympathy I might have had for her. If Mia signs while medicated, can she challenge later? Priya read it aloud during a video call. I was feeding Oliver. For a second, I stopped breathing. Aaron took the bottle from me, finished the feeding, and let me leave the room. I threw up in the bathroom. Not from weakness, from finally understanding how long they had planned to use my most vulnerable day against me. The legal consequences came in layers. First, the trust board removed my father from every advisory seat connected to Celeste's foundation. Then Bellamy Outdoor Living lost a major partnership with the Children's Adaptive Equipment charity Grandma had funded, because the board could not justify working with a man accused of coercing a postpartum mother over a child's trust. Then Drew's vice president role was frozen pending review. Then Kendra's image collapsed inside the social circles she had worked so hard to impress, not because people suddenly became moral, because scandal is contagious, and wealthy people avoid it like illness. My mother wrote letters. They began with excuses. Your father was overwhelmed, Kendra was grieving, Drew felt replaced. You know how difficult legacy can be. I did not answer. Then the letters became softer. I should have stopped him. I was afraid I failed you. I still did not answer. One evening, 3 months after Oliver was born, she came to the cottage gate. The intercom rang. Aaron checked the camera. It's your mother. I was rocking Oliver in the nursery. My body went cold. Tell her to leave. He nodded, then stopped. Do you want to say it yourself? I looked down at my son. He was watching the ceiling fan with total fascination, unaware that adults could be so ridiculous and cruel. Yes. I went to the monitor. My mother stood outside the gate, holding a gift bag and wearing the same pearl earrings she wore to every difficult conversation. Mia, she said, voice breaking. Please, I just want to see him. I pressed the button. No. She startled at my voice. I am his grandmother. I closed my eyes for 1 second, then opened them. You were my mother first, she cried then. I know. No, I said. Knowing would have sounded like you opening the hospital door. Knowing would have sounded like you handing me the call button. Knowing would have sounded like you saying, Warren, stop. Her face crumpled. I was scared of him. So was I. She covered her mouth. I said, and I had just been cut open. There was nothing left after that. She lowered the gift bag to the ground like an offering. I did not send Aaron to get it. After she left, I watched through the camera as a raccoon dragged the tissue paper halfway down the road. It was the first time I laughed about anything involving my family. It felt like healing. The hardest day after that was not the legal meeting. It was the first pediatric appointment. That sounds strange, but new mothers understand how small things can become battlegrounds after trauma. Oliver was 6 weeks old, wrapped against my chest in a striped blanket, when I walked into the clinic and saw my father's assistant sitting in the waiting room. Her name was Marcy. She had worked for Bellamy Outdoor Living for 14 years, and she had once sent me birthday cards written in my father's handwriting because he never remembered the date. She stood when she saw me. "Mia," she said softly, "your father asked me to deliver this." Aaron stepped between us before I could answer. "What is it?" Marcy looked embarrassed. "A letter. Nothing else. He said it was important." I took it because some old reflex still moved faster than wisdom. Inside was not an apology. It was a photograph of my father holding me as a baby, with one sentence written on the back: "Do not let strangers turn you against your blood." I stared at it until the clinic noise faded. Strangers. Rebecca was a stranger when she protected me. Priya was a stranger when she activated the trust. The security supervisor, the patient advocate, the board chair, the officer who took my statement, the lactation consultant who sat with me while I cried, all strangers. And my blood had entered my room with legal papers. That was the day I understood that family language can become a weapon when the wrong people hold it. I handed the photograph to Aaron. "Give it to Priya." Marcy's eyes filled with pity. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I believed her, but I did not comfort her. That was new for me. For most of my life, I had been the person who softened everyone else's guilt. I made jokes when people hurt me. I explained my father's behavior to outsiders. I translated my mother's silence into fear instead of choice. I told myself Drew was immature, not selfish. I told myself Kendra was grieving, not cruel. Motherhood ended my career as the family interpreter. Oliver needed a mother whose energy was not spent making villains sound complicated. At the appointment, the pediatrician said he was gaining weight beautifully. Normal reflexes, strong lungs, alert eyes. Every good report felt like a small revenge. He was not unstable. He was not misplaced. He was not an asset awaiting reassignment. He was a baby thriving in the arms of the woman they had tried to remove. 2 months later, Priya asked if I wanted to attend the final trust review in person. The board had requested a formal guardian statement. Before closing the matter, Aaron said I did not have to go. Rebecca offered to write a supporting statement. I almost said no. Then I thought of Oliver growing older and asking one day what happened after his grandfather tried to take him. I wanted the answer to be simple. I went. The meeting was held in a glass conference room at the foundation office. My father sat on one side of the table with his lawyer. My mother sat beside him, hands folded so tightly her knuckles looked white. Drew sat 2 seats away from Kendra, which told me their marriage was already cracking under the weight of consequences. I walked in wearing a navy dress, low heels, and a scar beneath my clothes that still pulled when I stood too straight. Aaron carried Oliver in a gray sling against his chest. My father looked at the baby first, not at me. Still, Priya placed a hand on the back of my chair before I sat, not because I needed help, but because she wanted me to know I had an ally within reach. The board chair invited me to speak. I had prepared notes. I did not use them. "My grandmother created this trust for children," I said, "not for control, not for image, not for my father's pride or my brother's disappointment. My son is not a correction for another woman's grief. He is not a replacement for the child Drew and Kendra wanted. He is not a key to a vault." Kendra began crying. For once, I did not stop. On the day after my surgery, these people came to my hospital room with papers designed to separate him from me legally, medically, and financially. They did not ask how I was healing. They did not ask if he was feeding. They did not even say his name. My father's lawyer shifted. I looked directly at the board. "I am not asking you to punish them because I am angry. I am asking you to enforce the trust because my grandmother was right. She knew love without boundaries becomes access. She knew access without oversight becomes theft. And she knew my child would need protection from people who could say legacy while reaching for a bassinet." The room was silent. Then Oliver sneezed, a tiny, ridiculous sound. Aaron smiled down at him. I almost laughed. It broke the tension in the best possible way because for 1 second everyone remembered the subject of the meeting was not a portfolio, not control, not reputation, a child. My child. The board confirmed the restrictions that day: permanent removal of my father from trust influence, no advisory role for Drew, no caregiving authority for Kendra, no family representative without my written consent and independent trustee approval. My father stood so quickly his chair rolled back. "This is my family." He snapped. The chair looked at him. "No, Mr. Bellamy. This is a trust, and you violated it." That sentence was music. Outside the building, my mother followed me to the elevator. "Mia, please." Aaron stepped forward, but I touched his arm. "I could handle one sentence." My mother looked at Oliver. I was weak. "Yes," I said. "I don't know how to be alone after all these years." That was the first honest thing she had said. I felt pity. Real pity. But pity is not permission. "You can learn," I said, "but not near my son." The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside with Aaron and Oliver. My mother remained in the hallway. As the doors closed, I saw her reflection in the metal, small and blurred, and for the first time, she looked less like a mother I had lost and more like a warning I had survived. That night, I slept for 4 straight hours. It was the longest sleep I had gotten since Oliver's birth. When I woke, the house was quiet. The monitor glowed beside the bed, and Aaron was asleep with one arm reaching toward my side, as if even unconscious he wanted to know I was there. I walked to the nursery and watched our son breathe. No audience, no lawyer, no folder. Just a baby in a safe room. That peace was worth every bridge I had burned. I placed my palm on the crib rail and made a promise without speaking. No one would ever teach Oliver that love meant surrender. No one would use my old hunger for approval to reach his future. The Bellamy name could keep its portraits, its boardrooms, its expensive lies. My son would inherit something cleaner, a mother who finally understood that protection was not cruelty. It was love with a locked door, and that door would stay locked as long as necessary. 6 months later, the trust dispute ended without trial. My father signed a settlement acknowledging he had no authority over Oliver's trust, no role in guardianship, no right to contact us about placement or family assets, and no advisory voice in the Celeste Foundation. Drew resigned from Bellamy Outdoor Living, officially to pursue independent ventures, unofficially because the board discovered enough incompetence in his department to make everyone grateful for the scandal that gave them permission to remove him. Kendra left him for 4 weeks, then returned after realizing divorced women do not automatically inherit other people's babies either. I know that sounds harsh. Motherhood made me less interested in polishing the truth for people who tried to steal my child. As for Nurse Rebecca, we stayed in touch. On Oliver's first birthday, she came to the party, a small backyard party at the cottage with paper lanterns, homemade cake, Aaron's parents, a few friends, and no one who believed love required paperwork. Rebecca brought Oliver a stuffed fox and me a card. Inside she wrote, "You were brave," before I entered the room. I only made sure the room remembered. I keep that card with Grandma Celeste's letter because both women taught me something. Protection can look like a trust. It can look like a nurse with a badge camera. It can look like a husband who blocks the door. It can look like a mother saying no while her stitches burn and her baby cries. Oliver is 15 months old now. He runs like he is late for a meeting. He loves blueberries, hates socks, and has Aaron's laugh. Sometimes, when he falls asleep against me, I think about that hospital room, the folder, the pen, Kendra's hand reaching toward his bassinet, my father saying, "The Bellamy heir." I used to think remembering would always hurt. Now it steadies me. Because every time I remember, I also remember the next part: Rebecca stepping in, Aaron arriving, Priya activating the trust, my grandmother's letter, the gate staying closed, my son staying mine. People ask sometimes if I miss my family. The honest answer is complicated. I miss the family I wanted. I miss the father I kept trying to earn. I miss the mother I hoped would one day choose me. I even miss the idea that Drew might become a brother if life humbled him enough. But I do not miss the people who walked into my hospital room. I do not miss the way fear lived in my body around them. I do not miss mistaking survival for loyalty, and I will never miss being the daughter who made herself smaller so greedy people could call themselves family. My father said my newborn would go home with my brother's wife. Then the nurse asked him to repeat it on camera. He could not, because men like my father only sound powerful when they believe the room belongs to them. The moment a witness enters, their power becomes evidence. If you are listening to this because someone in your family has ever tried to use your weakest moment against you, hear me clearly. You are not required to sign. You are not required to explain. You are not required to hand over your child, your money, your home, your peace, or your future because someone says family. Family is not a legal loophole. Family is not a custody strategy. Family is not a reason to threaten a woman who just gave birth. My name is Mia Bellamy Reed. My son came home with me. The trust is protected. The gate is closed. And every time Oliver laughs, I hear the only verdict that matters. They failed. Protect the baby if you would have closed that hospital door forever. Tell me honestly, should Mia ever forgive her mother for guarding the hallway, or is silence during abuse its own kind of betrayal? Subscribe for more emotional stories where the quiet woman finally gets the witness, the proof, and the power to protect what is hers.